All right, let's move on here to our last hand. And this hand was really, really out there. I mean, we had seen somewhat standard live play throughout, the entire night. It was just a really odd set of decision making from a lot of the players. So let's take a look at it here. So here we've got Preston opening it up here for a raise with Ace King. By the way, too, a little bit of a live intangible. I like this is that where what we have here is we have a non-straddle, like I said, with Ken or whatever he's picking up, but everyone else was straddling. So even though this hand was a $5 hand, I think one of the things that isn't necessarily noticed in this particular situation is that you can still open to almost the same sizing and you'll get the same amount of action. So he's opening to 30, as opposed to if the game was always 5-5 and opening to 30 would look crazy. Because the open sizes are larger, 8 of the 9 hands, because 8 of the 9 people are straddling, that one guy that's not straddling, you can actually use similar sizing to what's going on when there is a straddle. Not quite as large, but sort of in between. Like in between what you would use for for just a regular $5 blind open and a straddle open, you can actually make it larger and you're going to get action. So Preston opens here to 30. I don't know if he was thinking about that, because that is a large open with a $5 blind. But like I said, the mentality of usually it's being straddled every hand. So Chaz 3-bets here with King 10 off. I mean, obviously it's a little bit light. I think probably Preston was playing pretty tight, so I think that this is going to overall be a losing play. Sure, you could do it with like your suited hands or something like that. And you can see the stack sizes starts with about 4,000. I think Preston is well aware of Chaz and how sort of out to left field he can be pre-flop. So he puts in the 4-bet for value here with Ace King off. This is not always a 4-bet, by the way, with Ace King off, but I've got no problem with it here. Really, the question then becomes are you going to play for stacks? It starts with a large sizing, right? They're 4K effective, and it's a $5 blind. People are like, oh my God, you got 800 blinds in with Ace King pre-flop. When in fact, even though on paper it's 800 blinds, he's actually opening to 30 as kind of as if they were playing off of like a 5-10 game, a 5-10 game. Still, 400 blinds would be a lot. I don't think that we're just going to see a shove here. I mean, if Chaz 5-bets, you call, you continue, right? But when we get to this point, I mean, if Chaz is 4-bet here with King 10 off, like, I really don't know what he was thinking about here in calling. Like, if you think that the guy is full of shit, I mean, I think you could re-5-bet bluff, but I've never seen anywhere on the charts that says that King 10 off here as a 3-bet out to left field from the small blind is going to be a defend here to a 4-bet, especially from a guy that really played close to the vest and wasn't really doing anything out of line the whole night, besides the hand where he had 7-4 spades and flopped the flush. But so he calls, and we go to the flop. So the pot's $810. Pot's getting big. Board comes out ace 10-7 with a couple clubs, and Chaz is going to check. I don't really know why I would necessarily check behind here, especially with the ace of clubs in my hand, which is, again, on the flop going to be better than not having the ace of clubs because you can continue, you can pick up backdoor equity. The idea is that if you bet and got raised, you could continue with the ace of clubs here because of the backdoor equity. Maybe Preston was thinking, well, I'll just sort of feign weakness and let Chaz sort of blast me off, like bluff at it. But again, even with Chaz being an aggressive post-flop player, usually people don't just suddenly go nuts on ace-high boards. It would be a lot different if it was a ragged board and you flopped like top set. I would bet here. I mean, I would bet here for sure. He definitely would have got called, by King 10 with the King of clubs. Turn here is the 6 of clubs. So it's like, oh, that's interesting. Now we've got the nut flush draw with Preston, with ace king, with the ace of clubs. And now we've got middle pair and the second nut flush draw. You can see that Chaz is almost drawing dead here. He decides to check here again, which I think is fine, especially with the king clubs in your hand. And now Preston decides to go with a bet here. So wasn't expecting the 4-bet defend here. Wasn't expecting Preston to check back the flop with ace king, with the ace of clubs. He now bets 425. And I certainly wasn't expecting this play here from Chaz because he has the king of clubs in his hand, and also he has a pair, so he definitely has some showdown value. My thinking here, if I were to try to get into Chaz's brain, which we will see what he does here in a second, is that he probably thought that Preston had like a weak ace that might have 4-bet pre-flop, like a, your primary ace X bluff being like ace 5 suited, ace 4 suited, something like that, doing a little bit of pot control on the flop by checking back, and now he's going to bet the turn. So if we're Chaz and we can get him off of that, then we're going to raise here to try to get him off of that. I don't think I would make this play. I think it's somewhat treacherous. It's really strange with the properties of your hand here, I think, to make this play. So he raises to 1,400, but I mean, that's the only thing that I can think about as to why he would check raise here, especially to this sizing. So now we're Preston and the pot's 2,600 and it's 975 for us to call, and we've got 3,200 left in our stack. So if we call, the pot will be about 3,500 and we'll have about 2,200 left. The reason why that's key is that if we shove, the pot will be about 4,700 and it'll be 2,200 to call. We have the ace of clubs in our hand. We have ace king. We don't have to worry about like some random club coming off and us losing. So, I mean, I think that the play here almost always would be to call, especially against an aggressive player that's capable of possibly bluffing. Because if we jam back over the top, I think it's very hard for us to get called by a worse hand here. I really do. Would we ever get a better hand to fold if two pair was played this way? Probably not. And then we also give the ability of our opponent to basically bluff the end. I think the fact that we have the ace of clubs is also an important thing because he doesn't have the nut flush. So, I mean, I wouldn't really panic here. I would probably just go call. Obviously, if the club comes, it's even better for us, but I don't want to prevent my opponent from bluffing, obviously, even though that we sort of see the cards. The only hand that makes a ton of sense here, played post-flop from Chaz, I guess would be a flush draw that checked the flop and then just went for a check raise on turn, which would consist usually of suited broadways, king, queen of clubs, king, jack of club. Because remember, it's supposed to be, he's not supposed to have an offsuit hand here with a 4-bet defend pre. If it was a legitimate defend to the 4-bet, the suited broadways of king, queen of clubs, king, jack of clubs, and queen, jack of clubs would be the ones, right? We have the ace of clubs in our hand. I mean, I guess he could have like a straight flush here, like 8, 9 of clubs if it was 4-bet defend, or like a suited connector, like 4, 5, something like that. I mean, that seems off the wall, but he's got king 10. The point that I'm making here is that he's representing an extremely thin value range for what happened here pre-flop because we have the ace of clubs. Because what this hand mostly would be the nut flush that was checked on the flop and now check raise on turn, but he can't have the nut flush. We have it. So because of that reason, I think his hand actually consists of a bunch of bluffs. We don't have to protect across clubs. The play here is to call all day long and go call. I mean, I have a really difficult time folding at the end here too to this guy, but I wouldn't jam back over the top all in. I don't know really what the point of that is, especially with the ace of clubs in your hand. If you want to say sometimes, well, I don't have a club in my hand, I'm just going to go with my hand. Maybe the guy's not going to bluff the river. The pot's big enough for me. I want to protect the equity in it. I don't want to give him a reverse free card. Okay. But when you've got the ace of clubs in your hand, there's really no reason to do that.